Um, so what was it kind of like being able to take what you learned directly from Ed and apply it to Sweden and Germany? That must have been a very interesting experience for you to be kind of a background person. To see it go on in America and then bring it back home, bring it back over to Germany and Sweden.
Well, we could, um, in observing and visiting and studying and spending some time or doing internships in Berkeley, you could learn a lot that we could then try to apply and modify at home. I mean, that was the general strategy. And you're probably aware of the Japanese Mr. Donut program, Daikin project, that allowed over the years many young Japanese people with disabilities to spend a year in places like Berkeley and to study and pick up what it was necessary to apply it at home. And I had the opportunity of seeing several people that I had originally met, several people from Japan, whom I had originally met in Berkeley, and met them again when I visited Japan. That was very nice to see the effect. And then the Japanese would do the same later on, and invited people from the rest of Asia to come to Japan to study with them and to internships with them. So that was impressive.
So Ed was kind of in a time where there wasn't really social media. He was very a global. He was more or less a global icon just because of his. He was the first domino, as it were, in the long line of independent living movement.
I didn't get that.
He was the first domino in terms of people in order to make the independent movement happen, and people kind of learned from him and took it back to where they were from.
Well, I don't know whether people learned so much of exactly him, but as I said, he was the icon.
Yeah.
He would stand, and a lot of things have been, he's gotten a lot of things credit for. And, I'm not quite sure whether he did all that stuff. But, if you needed some address, some place to peg, to credit somebody, then it would be obviously be Ed, because he was in people's mind. And he was so visible, and as I said, so charismatic that he managed to get credit for things.
So, what was Ed like as a young activist?
Well, I've never seen Ed as a young activist. When I finally saw him, met him in person, what you say, 74, he was, let's see, Ed was, I think, 4 years older than I. So in 74, I was 31, and he must have been 35. So he wasn't that young anymore.
Right. You have a story or anecdote about Ed that gives us an idea of who he was?
We spent a lot of time together, and I've known him from many perspectives. I've seen him together with his wife, Catherine. I've seen him with his... No, I never saw him together with his son. Mr. That. I know Zona, and had a very good relationship with Zona, his mother. Whenever I was in town, they would invite me for dinner at the greenhouse first, and then when he came back from Sacramento at the other house. And it was always great food. And I would make a point of remembering, and rhapsodizing about the previous dinner I had, of years between them. And in that way impressed Zona, and made sure that she was keeping up the good habit of making fantastic food. So that was one thing. 74 was interesting too, because in those days I spent a month in Berkeley. I hired a personal assistant there, and I still had my car that I could drive myself, that I had used all these years in Los Angeles. So I was invited for Christmas Eve at the greenhouse. And I drove up, parked the car in front of the house, and could see from the car through the bay window, and a beautiful bay window at the greenhouse, and they could observe me. So I left the car, went around the house to come up through the back door, because the back door that went through the kitchen, there was the ramp. It had been raining in the afternoon before, and it was slippery in the ramp. And I drove up with my electric wheelchair. And for some reason, I don't remember, I got a little bit insecure and backed it up, but put it on full blast again. And the result was, of course, that the front went up. It was terrible. The front went up. But at this moment, the back door opened and Randy, his brother, came out, immediately recognized the situation, and pulled me down on my foot pedals that already were high up in the air. And had it not been for Randy, I would have toppled backwards, and who knows whether I'd still be alive. Had it not been for Randy and the gallon of Gallo wine I had on my lap, because that was sort of a counterbalance. I would have raced back much faster without that gallon. Yeah, that was exciting. These were exciting times. I was lucky.
So any more stories you have about Ed? We have time for one more.
Wow. Yeah, we used to sit around in his living room. He was in the iron lung, and shoot the breeze and smoke some grass. And then he would make a call and talk to some senator, California senator, or there was the time of before Jerry Brown Jr. became governor, and it was him who then appointed Ed as the head of the Department of Vocational Rehab. And so he would be sitting there in his lungs, and I'd be next to him, and all of a sudden comes this call, and he would talk to the governor about politics. That was impressive. And when he became the head of the vocational rehab department. I remember I wrote him a letter or a card saying, "You are what you smoke." Dynamite. Dynamite, because he used to say that, "Oh, I got some really good stuff. Real dynamite from Mexico. You got to try that." Yeah, in those days, the stuff wasn't legalized yet. So it was more fun.
I'll take your word for it. I haven't tried it myself, but I'll be sure to take your word for it. What was the moment you kind of realized that he was a game changer?
I'd say, and whether he by himself or together with lots of other good people, I think the latter is more likely. I think they changed when they attracted people to come from other parts of the States to come to Berkeley, because something was happening there. And of course, the politics of time helped. You got the free speech movement that started in Berkeley. You got the Black Panthers, who had, I think it was the West Coast headquarters in Oakland. So a lot of political developments of the time, anti-Vietnam protests, etc., made Berkeley a magnet for everybody, including people with disabilities. So they, Ed and his friends around him, they were able to utilize this magnetism of Berkeley for their own purposes of getting good people with disabilities who wanted to change things, not just talk and complain, but wanted to change things. And that was impressive to me, that if you had an idea and wanted to do something, you were welcome. And you had an immediate place. And when I came to Sweden here as a foreigner from the outside, I mean, I was a foreigner in the US, I was a foreigner here in Sweden. When I came here in Sweden, I had all this knowledge, I had all these stories I could tell, and I'd seen all this good work. And I tried in the beginning to do something about it and tried to get it implemented here. But people would look at me, wouldn't take me serious. I'll give you one example. In 73, the year when I left the US, Los Angeles, US, the first wheelchair accessible buses of the Los Angeles Rapid Transit System were in action. When I told, a year later, when I told them here in Sweden, a disability organization at their meeting, when I told them about this, they looked at me and said, "That cannot be true, man, because how could it be true in Los Angeles if we here in Stockholm had not even discussed the idea?" You get that?
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of stuff. But the ability to get involved at any level in Berkeley, in the community, that was fantastic. It was open. My feeling was that membership was open. Everybody could join and do their best and be acknowledged and seen for that. And that was outstanding.
So it was fully inclusive, is what you're saying. It wasn't like no one could, if you had an idea, you were pretty much accepted to. And told you to run with it.
Yeah, if you had an idea and got things moving, people would see that and encourage you and accept you. In many places, other places, there's jealousy, there's rivalry.
You have any funny stories of Ed or moments you've had with Ed?
There were stories around that he wasn't very good at was not very good at keeping time, and would arrive hours later and apparently couldn't care less. And sort of people, accepted it, which of course, ideologically speaking, I'm not completely convinced that this is correct, because if you want to be taken serious, if you want to be taken as ordinary citizens, we got to behave just like ordinary citizens and not blame things on, and talking about cribble time and all these other weak excuses. So, yeah, I'm not in favor of that. But maybe that's my Germanic background.
How did Ed find and create his support system within the disabled community?
I don't really know. I don't know. He, as I said, he was able to attract people to come to Berkeley and get involved in the work. I mean, he did not contribute to a climate of suspicion when somebody else wanted to join and contribute. So he encouraged people. Judy used to tell that Ed had invited her to come and join him in Berkeley. I forgot the details how that worked. So he managed to attract people and have them work for him.
What should you be advocating for to help carry? How should we carry his legacy on?
How should we carry his legacy on?
Yeah. How should we, as youth, because I'm 25, I'm still somewhat youthful. How should we carry on his legacy, kind of, is what we...
Well, in a way, your generation's job, is a little bit more difficult. I mean, in its time, there was lots of space. It was wide open for any initiative. There was a need. And as soon as you pointed the finger for something, all you needed to do was to be good at pointing things out and be good at coming with the suggestions and be good at approaching the right people and be good at exerting political pressure. But in your generation, I mean, you've got, for example, in the US, you have the ADA. I mean, this is a beautiful document, probably not perfect, and has to be implemented, and sometimes, it isn't. But you got everything, there's a lot of things that you already can stand on, which means that your contributions might not be as gigantic as the people from the previous generations. Like the later you come into the game, the more has already been done. Well, that's a generalization because I know precisely that it's not always the case. There's some things in time are taken down again. You build something up, get some legislation into place, and a few decades later, they dismantle it. So it's a never-ending struggle. And what we could learn from Ed and his generation is the enthusiasm, the fun they had while fighting. I remember, it has nothing to do with Ed and Berkeley now, but I remember I was once invited to Dublin, Ireland, to take part in the Disability Pride Parade there. It was great fun. It was raining, but a lot of people joined. And afterwards we would gather, have red wine and sing. We had a lot of fun. We have comradeship. We felt we had friends everywhere we went because of our common fight for disability rights. And that helped us a lot. That, that's a reward in itself, because most people don't do this for money. We need the rewards in that form, into companionship, in the form of companionship and friendship. That's what we get. And that's what we have to keep in mind. These are the most important things that get people moving. A feeling of belonging, companionship, friendship. We are not by ourselves. We share this situation, shitty as it may be, but we share that with other people, and we can do something about it if we play our cards right. That's what we can learn.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a special kind of community. I think just being part of it all my life, I think it's one of the more special things that I love about being disabled is that community aspect, and the fact that no matter who you are, you kind of get the sense of like we're all in the same metaphorical boat, as it were, and we're all just trying to make the world a better place for us. So, yeah, no. One thing I love about this project actually is that not only that is being able to reach out to all you guys. I met a handful of you guys already, but been learning about Ed, but also learning about the other guy, learning about who you how Ed and how the community aspect of it all, and just go to the community and learning about Judy Human and learning about you. So my final question before we wrap up here: what would be Ed's dream for the disability community today?
His dream for the community today? Well, I don't think it would be radically different than the expectations he had at his time. Things haven't changed so radically, especially not worldwide. So there hasn't. Things change very slowly, if they change at all. Progress is slow, so we don't need to change our dreams. It's still the same dream of being part of a community of being accepted, being seen and being respected, being loved for what we are, not seen through people's prejudices, preconceived notions. Yeah. His dreams are still the same.